Happy Sunday morning, everyone. Welcome to 4th and 1 podcast reaction to week 7. Thank you all. If you listen to this, if you are listening to this, if you've been listening, thank you. Thank you all. We now have 101 subscribers. That is awesome. So thank you for being here. I'm just going to, for the next 30 minutes or so, give my genuine reaction to week 7 on the different games. So feel free to comment, like, subscribe, share down below. And don't forget to, hit that subscribe button because we do this for you guys, the fans, the listeners. So let's just go ahead and kind of jump right in here. And let's start at the top because there's no better way than start at the top. Ohio State, Illinois. Nothing more about this game needs to be said, and of course then I will say more, is that Ohio team is the clear-cut number one team in the nation. This defense is so incredibly good. The offense is talented. Julian Sayin is managing the game so well. They just don't feel threatened at all. Julian Sayin had a QBR of 86. They ran for 109, which as a team, which actually isn't great, but they controlled the line of scrimmage, I felt, all game. Their defensive line controlled the game. They held Illinois to 47 yards rushing. So if you can't run the ball and then they're just controlling the clock, this is what you're going to get. This does remind me a lot of not only last year's Ohio State team, but then the Michigan's year in 23, where it was just, they didn't do anything. They didn't wow you by any stretch of the imagination. But when it came down to it, you look up and you're just like, oh, we just got thoroughly dominated today at the defensive line of scrimmage. Offensive line doing their job. Julian Sayin not turning the ball over. So I really am impressed with the Ohio State Buckeyes. They are clear-cut the number one team in the land. The only people stopping Ohio State from winning a national championship as of week 7 in 2025 is Ohio State themselves. The number 2 team in all the land, it is probably Miami, but number 3 is probably now Indiana. At the end of this, I will give my top 5 Natty contender list, as I have kind of the past 3 weeks since I've been doing this. Indiana walked into Eugene and kind of dominated the game. They had 343 total yards to Oregon's 267, 215 passing for Indiana, 186 for Oregon, 128 for Indiana, 81 yards rushing for Oregon, 2.7 yards a carry. Time of possession, Indiana. Turnovers, Indiana had less. Penalties, Indiana did lose that by 1 more penalty. Indiana first downs, almost 10 more first downs. They went into Eugene, Oregon, the Loud House, a place where it quote unquote never rains, and they dominated Oregon. Oregon really was only in this game in the fourth quarter because of a pick 6 that Mendoza threw. Other than that, Dan Lanning went for it on 4th down at the beginning of the game. That led to an Indiana field goal. And then it was Indiana just kind of took the game, ran with it. So Indiana, they are on my Natty contender list. Oregon is off. I told you this list fluctuates on the weekly depending on what I see. And Oregon, especially now with Penn State losing a 3rd straight game to Northwestern, that win doesn't appear to be as awesome as what people thought it was, including myself. Indiana is very impressive. Indiana is very impressive. They are top 5, top 10 offense and defense nationally. They do a lot of things well. I don't think there's anything that they do unwell. And I haven't really watched them enough to know if they need to improve in great areas on their team. But they are, I think Ohio State is still above Indiana based on how much Ohio State I've watched this year. But I think Indiana is a clear now number 2 in the Big Ten Conference. And with that win over Oregon, that would kind of fall along the same lines of thinking there. Ole Miss messed around with Washington State off of the bye. Trinidad Chambliss kind of rescued that game late for the Rebels. I don't think any less of Ole Miss, despite the 3-point win over Washington State. It could just be rusty off of the bye. You think it would be a little more crisp, so I'm not really sure. We'll just kind of have to see how that looks 1 week at a time with Ole Miss. But the team that really impressed me, another team that really impressed me, is Texas A&M. I am still waiting for the floor to fall out on this Aggie team, and they just keep winning. The defense now in 3 consecutive weeks have come around very nicely. They held Florida to 74 yards rushing on the day. Meanwhile, themselves, they ran for 183 and 3 touchdowns. Reed was efficient, 16 of 26, 234, QBR of 81, 1 interception. It was tied at 14 after 1, and then the A&M defense really settled in and held Florida to 3 points the rest of the game. I don't know what this says about Billy Napier, because dude's a cat. He has 9 lives. He's on his 5th life. Will this be the loss to throw to finally push the Billy Napier experiment over the edge and cause Florida to fire him? I don't think so. Especially with Texas winning, beating Oklahoma. I'll get into that in just a minute. But Mike Elko has a squad. The defense is finally coming together and finally looking like a Mike Elko defense. Marcel Reed and the offense doing their thing. I do believe, though, Le'Veon Moss did get hurt late in this game. I thought that I heard that. If I'm being totally honest, I wasn't super locked in to this game because the Michigan game was going on. Maybe not. I thought he did. No. So no news on that. So they must have, when I tuned into the game, they must have just been talking about his injury at the beginning of the year. And I translated that to he got injured this year. I do apologize. However, he only had 5 carries for 46 yards. So I do wonder if he was a little banged up in this game. Ruben Owens ran the ball 17 times, 51 yards. Marcel Reed did carry the ball 7 times. So a little dual threat action. And again, the defense coming together. They're winning games. They're kind of squeezing the opponents. So A&M continues. I'm waiting for that floor to fall out under them. I'm not sure. It could still happen. It did not on Saturday, so they keep rolling. The Red River rivalry, another shocker. There are some shockers in this rivalry from time to time. More likely than not, Texas manhandled Oklahoma. It was close mid-third quarter. It was 6-3 at halftime. Texas was losing. Then Texas rattled off 20 straight in the second half. John Mateer threw 3 interceptions, clearly did not look like himself. Now, I will say that John Mateer is a gunslinger and does put the ball into harm's way. Even in the Michigan game, there were chances Michigan had to intercept or force turnovers. So it's not like John Mateer was a finished product and a dominant product. There were times that he showed flaws. Now, fast forward to this game, I think he just came back from his thumb surgery a little soon, maybe a little rusty, but he was 20 of 38 for 202 with 3 interceptions. They did not run the ball well either. Oklahoma, that's kind of been their thing all year, where John Mateer was their running game. And then he went out and they kind of supplemented it. But in this game, Texas really shut them down, held them to 48 total yards rushing. Meanwhile, Texas ran for $138. And Arch Manning managed the game, 21 of 27 for 166 and 1 touchdown. If he does that the rest of the year and then next year shows improvement, takes a jump, Texas 1-1 in the SEC can still get where they want to go. Absolutely, Texas can still get where they want to go. Oklahoma's not out. I think Oklahoma will feel good. Their defense is still there. It's not like their defense just got run up and down the field on. They only gave up, or Oklahoma's defense, 304 total yards. It's not like they gave up 500 total yards to a struggling Arch Manning. They kind of held things in check. Again, a punt return in the fourth quarter really put this game away for Texas. outside of that, Oklahoma kind of hung around. It's just John Mateer's mistakes let Texas just kind of pull away here. And then Simmons finally had a game. Colin Simmons really were no-shows in big games for Texas. He finally showed up for Texas. He had 2.5 sacks on the day. But yeah, Texas really kind of dominated the game in the second half and really pulled away from Oklahoma. Does that... I thought that Texas being unranked was a little unfair. I think now Texas probably goes back to being ranked. I'm not sure that this loss says a lot about Oklahoma. I think next week when John Mateer's kind of feeling a little better, farther out from surgery, I think if at that point it's another performance like that, okay, yeah, then we need to talk about Oklahoma not being a top team. But at this point, I think it's kind of wait and see on Oklahoma and see where they land. Alabama went to Missouri and did not dominate the game by any means, and Missouri kind of hung around. The final score, 27-24. Mizzou got a late touchdown, but really this was a 17-27 game with Alabama controlling it late. I really think that this Alabama team is just growing in confidence week by week by week. And the fact that their beatdown that they had as a team in a loss was week 1 is a huge bonus. Because the earlier your beatdown happens in your schedule, everyone, the committee, the media, everyone has recency bias, right? So the further you get away from week 1, the better, the more people are likely to forget, oh yeah, you're bad, your worst game is really bad, because Florida State has now lost 3 straight as well. So Florida State not looking great. So that loss not looking as good as it was even 2-3 weeks ago. The game was very even. Total yards was 326, 330 for Bama and Missouri respectively. Passing yards 200 for Bama, 167 for Missouri. Rushing yards 126 for Bama, 163 for Missouri. The big thing is that Bo Perbula threw 2 interceptions, and Bama really just controlled the game. They had a big long drive in the third quarter to score. In the third quarter, they went 17 plays, 66 yards at 9 minutes. Right after Alabama came out from halftime, got the ball. They were already up at halftime, 17-10. Ball got punched out. Mizzou turns that into points. Now, Mizzou is it was 17-10. Now it's 17 all. And then Alabama goes 17 plays, 66 yards, 9 minutes to kick a field goal. And that was kind of the chokehold that Alabama needed, because it just kind of drained the clock. Alabama got a touchdown in the fourth quarter. Missouri then kind of responded late to make it a game. Onside kick attempt went to Alabama, and that was the game. But this was a very even game. Missouri only has 1 SEC loss. That's great for them, because I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they can play with everyone left in the SEC and with everyone left on their schedule, which I'm pulling up now. They're at Auburn next week. Yeah, they're at Auburn next week. They can win that game. They're then at Vanderbilt. They can win that game. They can beat A&M. They can beat Mississippi State. They can beat Oklahoma. And they can beat Arkansas. What I saw on Saturday, Missouri can end up in the SEC title game. Absolutely. Bro Perbula, with his arms and legs, he led them in rushing, 61 yards rushing. He's just got to cut down on the turnovers, and I think if he cuts down on the turnovers, guess what? It's Missouri probably wins that game. Missouri actually got the ball back and was driving, and then Perbula kind of overthrew his wide receiver. So I think if he cuts down on, they were driving for a game time field goal. Excuse me. So I think if you just cut down on the turnovers, Missouri is right there. Alabama, again, continues to improve. Jam Miller really needs to establish himself, and they really need to be able to rely on Jam Miller, because their running back room is not deep enough where if Jan Miller goes out for Alabama, they can have a reliable running game, and they're going to need that down the stretch. Third Saturday in October is next week with Tennessee, then South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma. I will be at that LSU game. Eastern Illinois and Auburn. They can win all those games. We could see a rematch of this game in the SEC title game very, very easily. Texas Tech dominated Kansas. Texas Tech continues to just run the Big 12 currently. But that's not the game I want to talk about. I want to talk about Georgia-Auburn. Now, I will preface this by saying I did not watch the first half of this game. I was watching Michigan get just ran through, quite literally, in the first half. Turned that game off, turned this one on in the second half. I will say this. In what I saw reported, and then what I saw in the second half, it did appear that the SEC needs to issue another apology to Auburn for officiating errors. The fumble at the goal line that they called a fumble. Again, I don't know, so please comment down below. If it was called a touchdown and then reversed to a fumble, that is absolutely the wrong call. If it was called a fumble on the field, I was okay with letting it stand. However, to me, it looked like a touchdown in the second half. So this would have put Auburn up 17-0. Then Georgia, so it was a tale of two halves. Auburn dominated the first half until the fumble in the last drive of the first half, which Georgia got a field goal. There were some questionable calls on that Georgia drive as well that allowed them to take the field goal. And then Georgia just outright dominated the second half. I will say there was a moment, I believe in the fourth quarter, where the time was running out and Kirby Smart is calling timeout. And then they say timeout, and then Kirby starts arguing, no, I wasn't calling timeout. So they gave Georgia a free timeout. That simply cannot happen. This game was so even. First downs, 21 for Georgia, 18 for Auburn. Total yards, 296 for Georgia, 278 for Auburn. Rushing yards, Auburn had more than Georgia, almost doubled them up. Penalties, again, Auburn 11 for 103. And they had the fumble lost. But some of the penalties I saw, I did not agree with. The fumble, again, if they reversed the call, absolutely the wrong call. If they set a fumble on the field and stood with it, I am more okay with that. However, I did think it was a touchdown. That's just me. So I think the SEC should issue an apology because there was some very bad officiating in this game yesterday. However, Auburn still had a shot. Jackson Arnold was getting hit, but had a wide open receiver for a touchdown that at that point would have tied the game. Like, Auburn had their chances. They just did not capitalize. Now, what does this say about Hugh Freeze? I think Hugh Freeze is done after this season at this point in time. It's just not. I mean, what does he have to do? He has been in all of the losses within the SEC. Oklahoma was a 7-point loss. A&M was a 6-point loss. Georgia was a 10-point loss. Really felt closer, as I already went over the stats. Oklahoma, the SEC did issue an apology for terrible officiating. Texas A&M, they just ran into Texas A&M's home field advantage and that defense. And then Georgia, again, I think the SEC should issue another apology for the officiating. So I think that this might be a thing where if Hugh Freeze gets an offer, maybe from a mid-tier school or a smaller or like a Big 12 school, like if Oklahoma State comes knocking, yeah, I think he might take that. This might be in a mutual agreement to part ways. They might outright fire him. I don't know. But they've been in every game that they've lost. They get Missouri, again, a winnable game. Arkansas, winnable game. Kentucky, Vanderbilt. They can beat anyone remaining on their schedule. That's what's so infuriating, I'm sure, for all Auburn fans. They can beat anyone on their schedule. And please don't get me wrong. The officiating did not make you lose the Oklahoma game and the Georgia game. It helped, but you still had chances in both those games to tie it or take the lead with long touchdown passes. Gotta be infuriating. For Georgia, though, I know that they were in the House of Horrors on the plains there in Auburn, but I'm just going to say this. I'm not believing in them as a Natty contender. I'm really not. They're not in my top 5. They might win. They might make the SEC championship game, and they could win the SEC, and I will have to see what they look like at that point in time. But as of this moment, again, week 7, after week 7, October 12th, 11:02 a.m., time and date of this recording, I do not believe Georgia is an SEC or is a national contender. I do not believe that. Hate me, Georgia fans, but I don't see it. Tennessee escaped Arkansas again. LSU escaped South Carolina. There's something wrong with LSU's offense. I understand South Carolina is a better team than their 3-3 record, 1-3 in conference. By the way, does Shane Beamer and the talk of him going to Virginia Tech, where his dad was a legend at, does that talk kind of get louder, right? Does that kind of mutually agree to part ways? Is Virginia Tech, because the Standers are a lot better at Virginia Tech. Now, South Carolina's a great job. It would be a step down, but I believe he would have more leeway at Virginia Tech. LSU outgained them by 100 yards, 422, 327, passing 254, 124. Rushing was 193 in favor of South Carolina. South Carolina had 13 penalties for 65 yards, 2 turnovers. LSU had 3 turnovers, though, 5 penalties, 54 yards. LSU is not winning clean. And you don't got to win clean, right? A win is a win, as I like to say. But you're not going to, the way LSU is playing, you cannot win a national championship. And again, that's just as of week 7. If they go on second half of the season and they're dominant and they look great, okay, great. Wonderful. LSU, national contender. But as of right now, as we sit here, I do not see them as a national. I see them as a very good team, not as a national contender. The defense is legit, though. The defense is national contender worthy. The offense is not. Michigan and USC should have their rankings flipped. There's nothing Michigan did well, especially defensively on Saturday. USC had 490 total yards to Michigan's 313. Their quarterback, Jaden Mayava, was 25 of 32 for 8.3 yards a pass, completion 265. They ran the ball for 225 yards. King Miller, the former walk-on running back at USC, had 18 carries for 158 yards. Ladies and gentlemen, he averaged 9 yards a carry on Michigan's vaunted deep rush defense. USC, before garbage time, was averaging 9 yards a carry. I cannot state this enough. Lincoln Riley has his Oklahoma offense at USC right now. That's what they were doing that's what he was doing with Baker and Kyler and Jalen. That's what he was doing. He was doing 9 yards a play, 9 yards a rush. His quarterbacks were very efficient, QBR 90. He was awesome. Mekhi Lemon is an awesome receiver. I wish Mekhi Lemon was on my team. 10 yards, but Michigan acted like he had, Lincoln Riley had the guard tackle, which is his bread and butter run play. The guard tackle pull. He had that working so well on Saturday. My brother says, puts in the group chat, can Michigan act like they've seen a pulling guard before? It's amazing. Their run they looked lost. Everything was easy. The only reason this game was a game in the first half was that Michigan forced a turnover. Michigan did have 2 red zone turnovers. That does not hurt. I don't know if Justice Haynes is gone for the season. He went out in the first half with appeared to be a rib injury. He was grabbing at his ribs. Bryce Underwood, 15 of 24, 61 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. The 1 interception was a freshman moment. Michigan only 1 Big Ten loss. Here's how this goes for. First of all, let me look at SC just real quick. SC, very winnable schedule. Next week, they get Notre Dame. They are at Notre Dame. If they beat Notre Dame, which is very possible, by the way, SC leads the nation in yards. Okay? They are the most prolific offense in the country right now. if SC beats Notre Dame, knocks Notre Dame out, SC's for real. The rest of their Big Ten schedule, at Nebraska, winnable. Northwestern, winnable. Iowa, winnable. Oregon, winnable now. At Oregon, but it's still very winnable. And then at UCLA, who I will give props to, looks like one of the greatest teams offensively now, ever. Just kidding. Not ever, but I hyperbolize. But they look night and day different. They beat Michigan. They hammered Michigan State. SC is a playoff contender. Natty contender? No. Playoff contender? Absolutely. With the running game going, and the defense is doing just enough. Let's flip it over to Michigan. 1 Big Ten loss, 2 losses on the season. The college football playoff is still very much in front of you. However, you got to win out, and it's got to look good, and you got to beat Ohio State. 1 more loss, you're done. But there's still a path here. We'll see if they're unranked or not. If the committee drops them all the way out and they become unranked, it's going to be very hard for Michigan to work their way back in. If they're still 4-25, there's a shot. Washington can do damage. They're coming west to east. Michigan State doesn't look, again, it looks like Michigan can beat anyone on their schedule. Washington, Michigan State, Purdue, Northwestern, Maryland. Ohio State would be the only one I say Michigan's going to get railroaded again. But their defense, they have to come together as a team and figure some stuff out, because that performance on Saturday is ridiculous. And for everyone saying that you need to let Underwood cook, something needs to be said about development, because Underwood is still very inaccurate. On the interception, he had Samaj Morgan for a first down. Didn't take that. Forced the ball. Again, freshman moment. But some of his passes on Saturday were very inaccurate. That could have been first down. Some of the responsibility for them not trusting Bryce Underwood to cook and take over the game falls on Bryce Underwood. First pass, first third down of the game, it was going to be a little swing out to Justice Haynes. First drive of the game for Michigan. Underwood throws the ball a million miles an hour, and Justice Haynes needs to hit him in the hand. No, he leads him. Justice Haynes can't even get a tip on it. He needs to put it on his body. Doesn't do it. And he's kind of staring at Justice Haynes, and I don't know what he was thinking. But listen, that's on you, Bryce. That's on you, buddy. He needs to get more accurate. His touch was way better in this game. Andrew Marsh looks like the real deal. Donovan McCulley looks good. Again, I think that there's a lot there to like, but they're going to have to improve, and they're going to have to improve quickly. And can they do it against a Washington team that also is a high, explosive, powered offense who beat them last year? Because this defense is not the defense from last year. I will 110% say that. Notre Dame handled NC State. BYU in double overtime beat Arizona. Surprise of the week. 2 surprises of the week. Utah just took the hammer to Arizona State, 42-10. Colorado upset Iowa State. The Big 12 is wide open. Florida State lost 3rd straight to Pittsburgh. So Big 12 is wide open. I'm just going to get the standings here of the Big 12 real quick. Give a few more shout-outs, and then I'm out. Right now, BYU sits at top, along with the Red Raiders of Texas Tech and Cincinnati, all at 3-0. It's going to be a wild finish in the Big 12. Can't wait for it. Indiana, Ohio State sit at the top of the Big Ten Conference. USC, Oregon, Michigan, and Northwestern all sit in second. ACC is Georgia Tech, Virginia, and Duke, and SMU is undefeated as well. SEC is Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Alabama, all undefeated, sitting at the top of the SEC. We'll kind of get into that on the full-length podcast. All right, a few more things here, just really quickly. James Franklin is now, I believe, 2-4 against Northwestern in his time at Penn State. That's very embarrassing. You can't lose this game. They lost Drew Aller for the year, whether or not it was I'm sure that some of this, yes, I'm sure Drew Aller, I do think Drew Aller broke his ankle, but I'm sure that there was a part of this where it's like, Drew Aller, we need to shut you down because your draft stock is falling and falling quickly. I don't know that you fired Franklin. Franklin definitely needs to make some wholesale changes, especially at offensive coordinator, because Andy Kolnicki is not it. They ran for $137. Katron Allen had the majority of the load, 16 carries for 90 yards and a touchdown, but things are falling off the cliff fast there in Happy Valley, in Sad Valley, I guess I should say. So Sad Valley's things are not going well. Shout out to the guys, the bros of Section 231 at the Oklahoma State Houston game. Houston blew out Oklahoma State 39-17. Stadium was empty. Guys goes in a section, takes his shirt off, starts waving it around, then is joined by more other guys, take their shirts off, spinning around. It was a great moment. The interim coach for Oklahoma State came out and said, hey, the players really kind of enjoyed it. And little things like that the fans do can show the players that the fans are still engaged, the fans are still there, and the fans still have the back in a bad Oklahoma State team. And I'm not saying Oklahoma State now turns it around and starts winning a whole bunch of games, but actions like that where the fans are sticking around and there's some camaraderie within the stands can rub off on the players and still tell the players, hey, there's still stuff to fight for here. Where we see you, we love you, let's do this. UCLA, like I said, they have turned into an offensive juggernaut. Either that or Michigan State's real bad, and maybe it's a mix of both. They had 418 total yards against Michigan State, 38-13 drubbing. So that's week 7. Finally, let me say this. Finally, my top 5 Natty contenders, and I do think on a given year, there's really only ever 5 teams. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but I like to say there are 5. So my 5 are as follows. It is Ohio State. It is Miami. It is now Indiana, clearly in there at the 3 spot. It is Ole Miss. And I will say this until I'm blue in the face. It is still Alabama. On the bubble looking out, I have A&M, Texas Tech, and Notre Dame. Those are kind of my next 3. But Ohio State, Miami, Indiana, Ole Miss, and Alabama. I think just Alabama's been through the ringer, and now they're getting on the board, bringing back around. All right, everyone. That will do it for me. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Please don't forget to download, subscribe, like, and share. Turn on those notifications so that you don't even have to remember. You just get a notification. We dropped a new podcast. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. We will see you on Wednesday for a full-length pod previewing Week 8. College football is going fast, but I love the sport all the same. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.